There are few things in life as pleasant as a day at the seashore. Fresh air, ocean breezes, and sun. It's a place to relax and to revive the spirit. It also offers endless opportunities for recreation, exploration, and fun. That's why so many people are drawn here and want to live as close to the shore as possible, and why every year our coastline becomes more developed and the beaches increasingly crowded.
Since becoming a biological technician, I appreciate places like Sandy Hook because they act as a sanctuary not only for the piping plover, but for other bird species as well. Also, I've realized how important and rare places like these are becoming along the eastern coastline.
Miles of beaches are a haven for recreation and at the same time, a rare remnant of our natural environment. Forests of holly trees, dunes capped with beach plum, nesting shorebirds, and other wildlife living along the shore are as much a part of our coastline as its beaches and bike trails. As our coastlines become more developed, natural habitats such as the beaches at Sandy Hook, New Jersey, a part of Gateway National Recreation Area, are more important than ever as a key element in the survival of many plants and animals. We have a natural partnership with our beaches. A habitat that stays healthy for wildlife and shorebirds is indicative of one that is also healthy for people.
Every plant and animal is essential to the environment. Each plays a unique role, and you cannot allow them to become extinct because that will upset the natural environment.
The piping plover is a small sand-colored shorebird that nests and feeds along coastal sand and gravel beaches in North America. Unfortunately, the piping plover is an endangered species, which means its population is at risk of becoming extinct. National Park Service biologists, wildlife and environmental agencies, and many volunteers up and down the eastern seaboard devote many hours working together to save this species. We still have an opportunity to help them survive and hopefully thrive. What it requires from us is to understand the simple needs of these birds, share some beach space, and look out for their well-being.
The Federal Endangered Species Act of 1973 was critical for the protection of piping plovers. In 1986, the Atlantic coast population of the piping plover was listed as threatened. As a result of being federally listed, intensive monitoring and management efforts have been put in place to protect the piping plovers. As a result of these efforts, the population has more than doubled since first being listed, from just 800 pairs to almost 1,800 pairs. The piping plover is an indicator of a healthy ecosystem, and although the ecosystem won't collapse without the plover, it speaks to the kind of world we want to live in. Do we only want to see rare wildlife in books and on TV and zoos, or do we want to be able to enjoy wildlife in its natural habitat today and for generations to come? 'Cause 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 'cause
I now see things that I never saw on the beach before, like least terns and oyster catchers. In looking for plovers and trying to see the bird that we're all trying to protect, I've discovered a lot of the flora and fauna that live out here as well.
Piping plovers spend the winter along the coasts of the southeastern United States, Mexico, and Caribbean islands. In spring, they fly north to breed, and many settle along the east coast from North Carolina to southeastern Quebec.
First and foremost, piping plovers need suitable habitat to nest and forage. They also need areas that are relatively free of human disturbance.
When they arrive at their breeding grounds in March, they make nests on beaches between the high tide line and the dunes, usually on the higher portions of the beach in thinly grassed areas.
Starting in March, the areas behind me are closed. Generally, they're closed because they have been traditional nesting areas for the piping plover. They've also provided the best areas for nesting based on the terrain.
By nature, the piping plover is a shy, skittish creature. And because this bird is so reclusive, you may hear its call long before you actually see it. That sound is how it got its name, piping plover, meaning plaintive bell-like whistle.
Visitors to the Jersey Shore have to share the beaches with many endangered species, and that includes the piping plovers. Human activity on the beaches can pose a significant threat to these birds. Walking through or fishing in the intertidal zones can prevent the birds from getting to the areas where they need to feed. Ball playing near the exclosures or the nesting zones will actually cause the birds to abandon their nests and fly away, leaving the eggs.
One of the other things that people often have questions about is the regulations on kite flying. If the kite goes over one of the nests, the animal is going to think it's a predator flying over it because it's going to be the shadow pattern on the ground. The other thing is if your kite does come in to the nesting area, you're violating the closed area policy of the park. Once they become a closed area, pets are no longer allowed on the beaches, on the ocean side. The birds see it as a potential predator, and therefore that's going to affect either their breeding, or if they have already nested, it could possibly cause them to abandon the nest altogether.
Their nests, known as scrapes, are shallow depressions made by kicking the sand out and forming the depression, which is often lined with shell fragments. The courtship ritual of plovers consists of high stepping on the beach and aerial displays before they mate. After mating, the female lays one egg every other day until she has a clutch of 3 to 4 eggs. The camouflage colors of the nest and the eggs blend perfectly into the surroundings. Both parents take turns sitting on the eggs. In this way, one can hunt for food while the other incubates. This behavior is known as a nest exchange. After about 27 days, the chicks begin to hatch.
Not only do humans impact the survival of piping plovers, but natural forces can affect them as well. For example, excessive rain and extremely high tides can flood the nests. If this happens early enough in the season, oftentimes the parents will renest up to 2 more times.
Black-backed gulls, fox, feral cats, skunks, and raccoons are attracted to trash and then are drawn to the nesting sites, where they eat plover eggs and baby chicks.
Predators are typically one of the main reasons that piping plovers don't succeed. Under the Federal Recovery Plan, there are methods prescribed that help us address predator issues. Without these methods, the plovers would not succeed.
In park habitats, many nests are protected by structures called exclosures. The top is covered with netting to discourage predators like gulls and crows. Wire mesh on the sides allows plovers to walk in and out, but helps prevent predators from getting in. In many instances, electrified fencing is placed around the exclosure to keep predators from raiding nests.
When putting up an exclosure, it is important that everyone involved is prepared and aware of their surroundings. Also, everybody has to work together as a team to do it quickly because the parents, who are usually already stressed, could abandon the nest.
To monitor the status of this fragile community, biologists from federal and state agencies and conservation groups use GPS coordinates to map the locations of nests. They also collect data on the status and numbers of plovers. This information is used to track the population and health of piping plovers and implement protective measures.
Each year the National Park Service uses GPS technology to go out and locate where the piping plover nests are. We also locate where the fences are, and this allows us to create maps for the visitors to know which areas in the park are going to be closed due to the piping plovers. We further take this data and send it on to New Jersey Fish and Wildlife as part of a larger monitoring program.
Parents do everything they can to protect their chicks. If an intruder comes near the nest, the chicks sit motionless while the parent tries to distract the invader away from the nest, often faking a broken wing. If threatened away from the nest, chicks will scatter and often seek protection under a parent's wing. When parents and chicks spend too much energy coping with stressful situations, they can fall prey to heat and physical exhaustion and not have adequate feeding time. Chicks have ravenous appetites because they must eat enough to triple their weight during the first 2 weeks of life. Piping plovers feed by poking their beaks into the wet sand, mud, or beach debris to find marine worms, crustaceans, and insects. Plovers have natural camouflage that blends into the sandy background and helps them avoid detection by predators. However, the same camouflage that protects them also makes it difficult for people to see them.
And once the chicks hatch, they need to get down to the intertidal zone to feed. Now, since they can't fly yet, we need to set up string lines to keep visitors from coming onto the beach. Otherwise, they'll scare the plovers, who won't be able to feed, and they'll end up running back and forth down the beach and get dehydrated.
My job as a seasonal interpretive ranger includes telling the public why we have string lines and why they're not allowed to be in certain areas and why certain beaches are closed. And it's really important, I think, that we do this education because it gives people a reason to care about this threatened species.
At about 1 month old, the chicks begin to practice flying and soon take to the air as fledglings. Piping plovers may begin flocking and migrating south as early as July, and by mid-September, the adults and fledglings have left their summer breeding grounds. For the surviving chicks, it has been a difficult struggle against the elements, natural predators, and human interference. Hopefully, through the continuing efforts of park visitors, national park biologists, wildlife and environmental agencies, and many devoted volunteers, the survival rate of next year's piping plover population will be even greater.
I see that our efforts are really making a difference, and I just hope that one day my generation will be able to see the piping plover delisted as an endangered species.
Having been a Jersey Shore resident for my entire life, I've always respected the ocean and the beaches. However, after working with the piping plovers, I've realized that the beach is not just an area for recreation, but a fragile ecosystem that needs to be cherished and protected for all time.
Although there are many challenges to protecting piping plovers, one of the more hopeful aspects is that 25 years in, we're approaching our 2,000 pair recovery goal. So all in all, recovery seems in reach.